Welcome back and thanks for staying with the agenda. Well, we are well into National Women's Month. This year themed the year of Charlotte Mannya Maxeke, Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. In our Friday conversation today, we're zoning in on women in information technologies. And of course, we can't have this conversation outside the national prerogative of digitizing the country. Our guests today, the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, she's busy trying to join. We have also got Mamela Luthuli, she's the CEO of Take Note IT. We have Kholeka Lwana, who is the co-founder of the Do Good Circle, and Zine Nkukhwana, who is the CEO of Lindamahle Management Systems. Ladies, thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning as we wait for the minister to come online as well. But let's start with you, Kholeka, just about the theme of generation equality and realizing women's rights. How present are women in the IT sector as South Africa tries to digitize and be active and be visible in the 4IR space?
Good morning, Desiree, and good morning to the listeners and to all my fellow panelists. Thank you for the question. So access to technology for women is obviously a symptom of inequality and underrepresentation in general in most sectors. Technology is no different. In fact, it is worse. In our country, in terms of top leadership, you find that we only have a representation of 4% versus males who could be sitting on the upper 70s. So inequality is a big problem. And with our country being the most unequal society in the world, it just makes matters worse. The gap is too wide. We still don't have young women represented in the space. We also have a challenge of the youth and women not transitioning from learning to earning in terms of the sector. So that is why an organization like ours, the Do Good Circle, focuses on making sure that we're trying to bridge that gap in terms of making sure that we make available skills training in the tech space, making sure that people can code so that they can design their own apps and get to participate in the new digital economy.
Mamela, how's Take Note IT ensuring the presence of women in the ICT space?
Thank you so much, Desiree. As Take Note IT, what we've done, because we've identified that there's a shortage of skills, especially in the cybersecurity space, in general, in both male and female. And we saw an opportunity to empower young women in that space. So we've developed the Cybersecurity Excellence Academy, where we equip, we reskill and upskill young people with cyber skills. And our strategy is to make sure that we absorb them as Take Note IT, and over and above that, we prepare them for the market. So we've got partnership with global companies. It's unfortunate because of COVID. Our plan was to place them in global companies in the US and Dubai. And so it's important for especially young women and men to be exposed in the cybersecurity space, because there's a huge shortage of skills in that space. So the jobs are almost guaranteed. It's the matter of exposure for young women and mainly for SMMEs in particular and big companies to make an effort of making sure that they've got a special program where they empower young people by exposing them in cybersecurity and provide training for them. So that's what Take Note IT has done successfully. So we've got 20 young women who have successfully completed the courses. They are working as we speak. I think that's really beautiful, and we can build into that as an SMME, and really hoping that even the bigger companies can respond to this call.
Ms. Nkukhwana, you are also the Deputy President of the Progressive Blacks in ICT, PBICT. You also work a lot with skills, developing skills in this space. Do you agree with Mamela that jobs are almost guaranteed if you have the skills in this space?
Thank you so much, Des. Thank you for inviting us here in this interview today. You know, it is as if me, Mamela, and Kholeka have known each other before today, because listening to them, they are talking exactly the same thing that I am saying. From Lindamahle Management Systems, we are also a training provider within ICT. And when we look at what we find out there in as far as the lack and the criticality of ICT skills, the need thereof, we find that South Africa really does need to do a lot of work when it comes to the ICT skills development. I can make a lot of examples that we find. Today, we talk of the fourth industrial revolution, all of us, and we seem to be leaving everybody behind, or some of the people behind, who are actually not exposed to this. And some people are still dealing with the issues of third industrial revolution. People who do not even have, computer knowledge. The basic computer knowledge, basic computer literacy skills that you and I, and probably everyone in the call here today, we are taking for granted. And we find these things on a lot of the, many times when we're doing the training out there, that the criticality of ICT skills is needed. And there is a correlation between the ICT skills development and the jobs, as well as, promoting the economy. So we cannot stress enough that we do need those ICT skills as well. Thank you.
All right, let's bring in the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies now, Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. I think it's a reflection of where we are, that we can have a conversation with you, a television interview with you while you're in your car. Thanks once again and welcome.
Thank you and for having me, Desiree, and to the program. I think what is important, and like the point out you are making now, to say the digital device is such that if we are all equal, we should be having this conversation. You should be at work when you are mobile. You should be at work at different points. So where we are sitting from a departmental or government point of view is that we need to bridge the digital divide. And to do that, first, we need to get the connectivity going, but we need to get the frequencies going. So our priorities is the spectrum. And related to the issue of spectrum is the digital migration, so that the rural communities can have access, just to hear you, Desiree, just to have that connectivity, that broadcast ability. But also when you've got that spectrum, when we've migrated, the opportunities become very vast for South Africans, for everybody to participate. The ones who want to make the apps can have apps and have places to sell their apps. They have their apps being used because the economy has got digital. And also the ones who are training can have more people to train in rural areas, in our townships, who will be ready to use those ICT skills. Because we tend to think that ICT skills is about ability to use Microsoft and whatever. But it's more than that. It's ability to sell your products online. It's ability to reach out and connect to another market overseas. It's an ability for you to learn new things. It's an ability to be innovative about the things that we say we're doing currently physically, which we can move and do them remotely. So what are the opportunities there? Education has moved to online, or has gone virtual. And as South Africa, we must say, how do we create opportunities for more people to be trained, to be virtual? I saw the University of Cape Town have launched they're launching an online high school. And there were criticism that they are privatizing. And it's not privatizing. They are simply saying, the world has gone online, so there will be schools that are online, and we should look at it from that way. So they are groundbreaking in that effect. So the ladies who are on your call, Ms. Nkukhwana, Ms. Luthuli, around how do you bring that training online? How do you get not only the training on ICT, but all other training? How do we train manufacturers online to create more people to participate in the industry? So for me, that's what we need to start making it practical, not to talk about the fourth IR as pie in the sky, but the meaning of that in practical terms in everyday life. And thank you for having me.
Minister, the country has already held a 4IR conference in 2019. The President, in his State of the Nation, has also given milestones and deadlines for full digitization of the country. How far are we in this regard?
So we have not moved as far as we should have moved. We had a deadline for next year on the digital migration, but we're thinking as a department that we can bring that forward. We're currently looking at proposals of what is possible to get the full migration out, be done within this calendar year, not financial year, within this calendar year. What are the things that have to be moved? We started to engage within the department, within the sectors, and also National Treasury. I'm hoping that from the Cabinet Lekgotla, the President should be able to make a major announcement around the revision of the digital migration target, and thus have an impact on the release of the spectrum, both the auction one, but also the public good spectrum.
Kholeka, let's come back to you. What do you think can be addressed with urgency in this space, especially in relation to bringing in women?
So I think I like what the minister is saying. And by the way, Minister, welcome to the sector. I like what she's saying about practicality. You know, we've had conferences, we've spoken about 4IR, and then COVID happened, and we had to adapt as fast as we could. And so I feel when it comes to women and representation in the space, we need to provide social equity. We need to shift ownership. So the big tech giants need to make way for women so that women are also represented. And we also need to ensure that we engage in social impactful investment programs and with a skew in terms of readdressing the injustice and making sure that they have a strong focus towards youth and women. And this is where we come in terms of providing the skills. We want to refocus education because, a degree that was relevant 5 years ago may not be relevant today. So people need to constantly upskill and reskill. We need to make sure that we look more into ensuring that we are manufacturing more internally as opposed to buying outside the country. So we need to make sure that in terms of tech manufacturing, we are engaging and involving more women in that space. We also need to ensure that, as the President had started with the 4IR Commission, it did its work, it presented policies which now need to be implemented. So we really need, as the Minister say, to get practical and actually make sure that on the ground things are happening. We need to create more technopreneurs in our country. We need to ensure that people are designing apps that can assist their communities at a practical level. And I believe that, you cannot do anything for women without women. So let's involve women more in roundtable discussions. And I really challenge the Minister to call the sector out and give us, a mandate and give us goals and give us timelines, because we all talk about transformation, but is it practical? Is there coordination on the ground? Are we implementing? Is there cohesion? So those are the things that are forefront in my mind. Thank you, Desiree.
Mamela, this is a dynamic space. Innovations force for there to be disruptions all the time. What are the future prospects for the sector in terms of talent in South Africa and skills?
Thank you so much, Desiree. I always say if you look in all the industrial revolutions, there's no opportune time than now, especially for women. So the main thing, like the Minister has mentioned, is the approach must be intentional. I think that's there, and zoom into being practical as much as we can. So the opportunities are vast. With now going online, all you need is the access to the internet. That's the first start. The information, there's so much data out there just for you even to do the 101 startup, or be it is artificial intelligence, be it it's cybersecurity, be it is being a data analyst. But the job, the opportunities are so vast and there's so many of them. But what is important is the basics. So if we can get the basics right, for instance, training, if we can have leadership, like the Minister has mentioned now, that is intentional and practical, and over and above that, there's no doubt that education is key and very critical in this sector, especially for STEM at a varsity level and up to the job employment. So the nurturing component, and most importantly, the opportunities are vast, from artificial intelligence to being an analyst, to being a coder, to being a resolver. There's so many. It's just the exposure and the access to knowledge that is so critical.
Zine, let's talk about the progressive blacks in ICT. What sort of, in terms of their policies, how are they viewing the involvement and activities of women in the ICT space?
Thank you so much, Des. At PPICT, I think one of the key things that we are looking at is really to bring women out there, like, my two colleagues have already said at the moment. Again, let me first start by welcoming you, Minister. We are hoping to meet with you very soon, one of these days. One of the things that we are pushing at as PPICT, and we are really not apologetic about that, is we have women not, window dressing in any of these things that are happening within ICT. We are saying as PPICT, us as women, we are here in our own right as women. We are not here taking anybody's space. We are here on our own right. We are not here to be labeled as, affirmative action or employment equity. We are here simply because we have studied. We understand the sector. We know the sector. And we want women, all women in South Africa, to be able to partake in the core of the ICT business. We don't want women to just be doing the menial administrative roles within the ICT. So we want them to be there, to be seated in those boards and making decisions and actually really leading in the sector. And I'm quite happy when I'm listening to the minister talking about the issue of the spectrum, because that's what we are talking about. We want a huge share of that to be given to us as women. And if there are areas where we are lacking in as far as skills development is concerned, that's where then we are saying as PPICT, then train us and develop us as women, so that we can be able to be on par with everybody else out there. And again, there's just a little bit of what we're looking at PPICT. If you're looking at moving towards information society, of which that's what ITU is talking about, you'll be having 3 stages of evolution towards information society. ICT readiness, which is the infrastructure that the minister is talking about, that spectrum that we're looking for, because it's going to give us the access to be able to do the things that we want to do. And again, it's of no use to put up the infrastructure, which is what we see out there. And we talk about that a lot at PPICT, because these things now, they become white elephant and nobody's using them. So we do need to see the ICT use of the intensity thereof.
Zine, I'm going to have to stop you here. We have time constraints. Minister, I just want to end off with you and say we started off talking about the national strategy. Let's just close off the conversation, and thank you once again for joining us. What are your plans for women as you take up this ministry?
So in this conversation, one has mentioned about being intentional. So my view is that we can't settle for 40%. We must demand 50%. Women, and this is women-owned, women-managed, because we can't window dress. But secondly, we can't just talk about percentages. We must talk about what are the things that we want to see ourselves as women participating in. We're looking at now on the spectrum to say when it's released, and even in the public one and the community one, how much are women organizations, women businesses ready to participate in that? And part of this work is to make sure that we prepare women companies to be ready. And in the conversation I had earlier in another platform, they were saying the requirements tend to be limiting. How do we make sure that we put requirements that do not limit women participation and youth participation, and be intentional about enterprise development for women-owned businesses and youth-owned businesses? Because of the history has made sure that they do not participate. But secondly, we're talking about, if we go into the public mandate of what we do, making sure that rural areas, schools are connected. Women are the mothers. How do we make sure that when you talk about connectivity, there are also those devices that must be there? How do you use women-owned companies to lead on the devices? I'm here now. I'm at Gallagher, like literally accompanying one young man to come and vaccinate. And we started at the vaccination site where it was driving. Unfortunately, they were not working. So we came here. And I realized I'm doing that because I'm a woman and I have a mother instinct to say, he says, I'm minister, I'm very scared to go. So I said, I'll go with you. And you couldn't believe when we finished to say, let's go, I'll accompany you, I'll hold your hand. to go and vaccinate if that makes you to go and vaccinate. And I know that women-owned organization will do a great deal in the ICT sector to bring the country and the community fully on board if they are supported and enabled to participate. And that's the commitment we make. So we commit to engage with women organization in the sector, to support the women who are running these businesses in the sector, to make sure that they participate, and requirements that are put are not limiting and will allow flexibility, and put enterprise development requirements to make sure that even when there's quality requirements, they must be able to participate and they're handheld. It's what we call risk taking on a nation and on a community that requires to participate. Thank you for having me again.
We haven't even scratched the surface and yet time is up, but let me really thank the women who joined us today. The minister says she will be taking risks, so we'll be watching to see if that happens. Khumbudzo Ntshavheni is the Minister for Communications and Digital Technologies. Mamela Luthuli is the CEO of Take Note IT. Kholeka Lwana is the co-founder of the Do Good Circle, and Zine Nkukhwana is the CEO of Lindamahle Management Systems. Let me thank you all for taking part in this conversation.